Hi, my name is Dave Handelman. My student number is S2006877. I live in Ottawa, Canada, which is the capital of Canada, and today we're going to be talking about the impacts of climate change on Ottawa.
Hi, my name's Lyra. I'm 8 years old and Dave's daughter. I've heard a lot about climate change through school, the radio, and I even decided to participate in one of Ottawa's climate strikes. But what I really wonder is what will Ottawa be like in 2050 when I'm 40 years old?
Hold on, Leora. Before we get to that, I think we should tell them a little bit more about Ottawa itself. Ottawa sits at 70 meters above sea level at 45.4 degrees north and 75.7 degrees west, and it is located on the mighty Ottawa River. The Ottawa River is huge, over 1,270 kilometers long, and forms the border between the provinces of Ontario and Quebec.
Ottawa is Canada's fourth largest city by population, at just over 1 million people, with another 300,000 people in Gatineau, Quebec, just across the river.
The city of Ottawa covers a huge area, including the city core, surrounding suburbs, and outlying rural areas. The economy in Ottawa is driven primarily by the federal government of Canada as well as the high-tech sector, with over 70,000 jobs at tech companies.
Ottawa has many beautiful government buildings in the city core along the river, and most are made of stone and concrete like our Parliament buildings and the National Art Gallery. There are over 14 different museums in Ottawa. In the core, there are also a lot of residential and office buildings which are primarily made of glass, steel, and concrete. Residential homes are usually built of wood with brick exteriors in the city center and suburbs on both sides of the river. The city also has a lot of green space for people to enjoy. We like to walk our dog on the river pathway.
Ottawa enjoys four very distinct seasons. Here you can see the mean temperature in the line graph and the mean precipitation of each month in the bar graph. In the winter, average temperature lows in January and February are about minus 13 degrees Celsius, and the average highs in July are about 27. So we get a lot of variability. And throughout the year, we get rain pretty frequently and plentifully, as you can see in the chart. Over the average year for the 30-year period ending in 2010, Ottawa received 868 millimeters of total precipitation.
Ottawa gets a lot of snow, on average about 2.25 meters per year. It's great for building snowmen. We also have a great winter festival that attracts a lot of tourists and the longest outdoor skating rink in the world right downtown. It's called the Rideau Canal.
Ottawa is no stranger to severe weather events. Let's talk about a few from the last 20 years. The ice storm. In January 1998, freezing rain fell for 5 days straight. It coated all of Ottawa and a huge area of Ontario and Quebec with thick layers of ice. It toppled power lines, electrical transmission towers, and caused a lot of damage to trees, buildings, homes, and cars. In fact, there was over $5 billion worth of damage. 35 people died due to various causes. Over 1,000 more were injured in car accidents or falls. Nearly 1.5 million homes lost power, some for as long as 6 weeks. In Ontario alone, almost 12,500 poles, transformers, and lines were damaged.
Tornadoes are rare in Ottawa. On September 21st, 2018, 6 tornadoes touched down in and around Ottawa and Gatineau. This included an EF3 tornado with winds up to 265 kilometers per hour. Over 250 homes and buildings were damaged, and over $295 million in insurance claims were filed from this one event. 450,000 people lost power, local schools closed, and government employees were told to stay home. The strength and damage was unprecedented in Ottawa.
Ottawa suffered 200-year floods 2 years apart in the spring of 2017 and 2019. They were caused by high levels of snowfall over the winter, as well as very high levels of rainfall at the time that the snow was melting. It's rare to get this combination in the same year. Water levels in 2019 were record-breaking. A state of emergency was declared in Ottawa, Gatineau, and numerous other municipalities. Over 6,000 homes and 100 kilometers of roads were flooded or at risk in Ottawa and Gatineau. The Chaudière Bridge, an interprovincial bridge in a main artery between Ottawa and Gatineau, was deemed unsafe and closed due to high water levels. Nearby Chaudière hydroelectric plant had 3 of 4 generators closed as well due to high water levels. Over 400 kilometers of the river was closed to boats, impacting interprovincial ferries, tourist boats, and rafting companies. Federal government buildings were also closed. Thousands of volunteers helped fill sandbags to try protect homes and buildings.
Let's talk about some of the forecasted impacts on climate change in Ottawa. The Government of Canada released the Canada's Changing Climate Report, or the CCCR, earlier in 2019. Overall, the CCCR predicts that climate change in Canada is likely to be about double the global average, similar to the IPCC findings of greater impacts at higher latitudes.
You can now see annual mean temperature records and projections specific to Ottawa for a 100-year period ending in 2050.
And I'll be 40.
For the 30-year period ending in 2010, Ottawa had an average mean temperature of 6.5 degrees. By 2050, they are projecting a mean annual temperature of 8.4 degrees in RCP 2.6 and 9.5 degrees for RCP 8.5. Here is a graph which shows the monthly mean average temperature historically in green, RCP 4.5 in orange, which shows a significant increase, and RCP 8.5, which is only marginally higher by 2050.
In terms of total precipitation, the CCCR states that the trend of increased precipitation in Ontario will continue, and by 2050, we will likely see further increases of about 5.5 or 6.5% based on RCPs 2.6 and 8.5 respectively. This aligns to the IPCC report on climate change impacts, which states that the locations at higher latitude than 45 degrees, like Ottawa, will see an increase in precipitation. Specifically for Ottawa, this will mean an increase from total annual precipitation of 868 millimeters in 2010 up to a mean of 931 millimeters in RCP 2.6 and a mean of 1,108 millimeters in RCP 8.5 by the time I'm 40. That's a lot of rain.
In Ottawa, the extreme and the variability of the weather in the future may cause the greatest impacts. Let's talk about some of the changes and the challenges they may pose. There will be more warmer temperatures, extreme hot days, and more heat waves. These are a concern for biodiversity as well as public health. Ottawa's aging population is more susceptible to heat exhaustion and heat stroke, as are children and chronically ill people. There will likely be more heavy rain events and more rain on snow, so Ottawa can probably expect more pluvial flooding. This will damage homes, roads, buildings, and Ottawa's aging infrastructure. Due to Ottawa's combined sewer system, intense rain events will cause more combined sewer discharge of runoff water and sewage into the river, impacting water quality downriver for Ontario and Quebec. There will also likely be more extreme storms with stronger winds, and in the summer, a greater risk of tornadoes. These winds can damage infrastructure and homes as well as office and government buildings that were not built to withstand such strong winds. The likelihood of more freezing rain events will also be higher during the winter. Similar to the impacts of the ice storm in 1998, freezing rain threatens transportation and public safety on the roads and sidewalks. Even more impactful is the potential damage to power generation facilities and transmission lines. With interprovincial dams along the river and an interconnected electrical grid, these impacts to the electrical system will impact both sides of the border.
Warmer temperatures mean the recent trend of increased vector-borne diseases will continue in Ottawa, including West Nile virus transmitted by mosquitoes and Lyme disease transmitted by ticks. The warmer temperature allows ticks and their hosts to thrive at higher latitudes, as well as lengthening the season of human exposure to ticks. My dad knows about this personally, as after a camping trip in June, he found 2 ticks on his leg. Ew! One of them was infected with Lyme disease. Luckily, he was able to avoid getting it.
Tourism will also be impacted. One of Ottawa's biggest tourist draws is Winterlude, a winter festival, and the Rideau Canal, the world's longest skating rink. As temperatures rise, the festival and skating rink are at risk. Boating and rafting tourist activities would also be impacted by the floods. Ski hills in Ottawa would be impacted by less snow falling and more rain. Finally, in times of emergency, government offices are the first to be closed down. This impacts the productivity of the government during large-scale climate events. There are also some benefits expected from climate change. There will be a longer frost-free season by up to 22 days on average in RCP 8.5 by 2050. This means a longer growing season for farmers and gardeners. Fewer freeze-thaw cycles. We can expect 5 fewer cycles in both RCP 4.5 and 8.5 by mid-century. This will reduce damage to roads and infrastructure from freezing water that expands. In terms of transboundary impacts, several have already been mentioned related to the electrical system being impacted by potential ice storms. In addition to that, transportation between the province of Ontario and Quebec may be vulnerable. Both interprovincial ferries and bridges are susceptible to extreme weather events such as flooding, as we have seen in the last few years here in Ottawa.
I hope you learned as much as I did about the impacts of climate change on Ottawa. The more I learn about it, the more I realize we need to take strong action on mitigation and adaptation to maintain our wonderful city. Thanks for watching.
Bye!
Bye!